that democracies in India, democracies that are relatively new in terms of us, these democracies have certainly voted and pushed elections, elections that have been sanctioned, elections that have been quite in the forefront, but at the same time, we've seen a great deal of exploitation through these democracies. We've seen the attacks on indigenous people in these democracies. We've seen the exploitation of resources at the expense of these people within these democracies, moving them off their land, and often cases calling them terrorists because they resist, all these within the framework of democracy. So what is this word, what do we mean by democracy? In a planet where 2.5 billion people live on less than $2 a day, a billion people or more live on less than $1 a day, what do we mean by this? I believe Michael Moore in his new film, when he talked about capitalism, a love story, he thinks that we need more democracy. And if there is more democracy, what does that mean? And what does it look like? How will we be able to shape in our own imagination what this democracy look like? And the choices that we make are going to come from you, right here. Where does it frame itself in the shape of what we call development, creating work that is just work that provides us a living wage, work that provides us benefits. What does that mean in terms of work that is socially responsible work? Where does democracy fit into all this question? So the key question is this, as we see it promoted, and certainly promoted when we see the idea of a president elected by more people who came out to vote than ever before. Is this the shape of this democracy? In looking at that within the framework of the work we must do. Because often the architects of this meaning of democracy that we have in our national consciousness aren't always the ones who are going to place us in a position where we are the ones who come to keep it. Certainly when we bring up the issue of healthcare, certainly we should have a wonderful public discussion about healthcare within a democracy. But any public discussion about it or any public dialogue about it has been very toxic. It has often misinformed us, disinformed us, and disempowered us in the discussion. What we talk about. Now this is the democracy now, where there should be a discussion about something that's basic and fundamental, something that is an entitlement, not a privilege, healthcare. And yet, this discussion is bordered on aspects of fascism. Threats to the president, as I said, disinformation, and a great deal of anger and a building of resistance to this idea. So we look at that from that vantage point. Is this a key for us? In looking at the healthcare issue, it's simply one entity, one aspect of what needs to be done, what is essential in a country where over 50 million people live without adequate healthcare. If we can't get a discussion about that, what does that tell us about this democracy or this idea of democracy? Certainly, if we take in consideration what de Tocqueville said more than 170 years ago, that we need in democracy informed citizens who are able to act on behalf of the general good and in their interest, then certainly we have some questions about the other discussions about that. If we want to think about democracy from that vantage point, we have a long way to go. Democracy cannot be simply set up for the mechanism of voting for a candidate at an appropriate time. Democracy has to be one in which we participate in every process. Democracy has to be a place where we change the objective condition of people who democracy means dissent. If there can't be dissent, there can't be no democracy. Not some shallow sense of dissent. Not some cosmetic sense of dissent, but dissent. Where we hit the public discussion that we need. It must be an essential part of that. It must be a part where we democratize everything that affects our lives. In terms of climate control, in terms of dealing with the issue, we must be a part of that democracy, that dialogue. We must be a part of the dialogue when it comes to what do we mean by sustaining our communities? How do we become a part of that dialogue? What are the choices that we have? How can our choices, how can we be at the table? How can we be at that table with our own ideas? In every instance that we watch change that has come in this process, this amazing process of transformation in terms of this democracy, it has come from the bottom up. It has rarely come from the top down. It has come from the bottom up. I love the story of A. Philip Randolph meeting President Roosevelt, arranged by Eleanor Roosevelt. That's quite some first lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. And President Roosevelt says to A. Philip Randolph, my wife tells me you have some great ideas for changing this country. He said, well, you're going to have to make me do it. And A. Philip Randolph, I'm paraphrasing, says, how about 150,000 people out at Lincoln Memorial? You think that's convincing to do that and make a change to them? And really, the first civil rights legislation through his action, doing that, taking action, in desegregating the workplace where contractors received government funding in the war effort was a major step that led to eventually the segregation of the armed forces in 1947, the segregation of the federal workplace in 1948. That process where people become the engine for this. That's the kind of questions we have to ask ourselves. We can't simply be a representative democracy. It has to be a participatory democracy in order for it to happen in every single aspect. We take the issue of education. We take the issue of education itself and the dialogue around education. All the great educational thinkers, whether it's John B. Kosal, whether it's Moses, always talk about how we have to place resources strategically in a place